Welcome, Khanna. Thank you so much, Representative Khanna, for joining us.
Katie, it's always a pleasure to be on.
What do you think about 2020, both the election and who Biden will choose as a running mate? And if you had a favorite or have a favorite? It's not done yet.
Well, I endorsed Elizabeth Warren a long time ago, and I still think she would be extraordinary for rebuilding our economy. I understand post George Floyd that the desire to have an African American woman, and I think Karen Bass would be extraordinary. I mean, she's someone who leads the CBC. She has support across the spectrum in Congress. She's on Medicare for all, but also works with Republicans and moderate Democrats. So I have been really appalled by the smearing of her. I mean, having headlines saying that she spoke about a communist. I mean, literally, he's out of McCarthy hearings. I mean,
Yeah.
Karen Bass has always said that she's a Democrat. If she were to say a kind thing about someone who happens to be a communist, that suddenly makes Karen Bass a communist. I mean, that's literally what the McCarthy hearings were all about, trying to find out if people had friends or said something or socialized with people of a different party. It's scary. And the fact that we have not had more voices on the Democratic Party come out and call that out, I think there's been a deafening silence.
I don't hold this against her at all, but she did take part in Venceremos, this brigade that worked in Cuba, that was helping the people of Cuba. Certainly, other candidates, other politicians have much closer relationships with much worse people than she did with Fidel Castro. It's just like this double standard in terms of who's okay and who's toxic. Susan Rice did a lot of things with people who I think are much worse than Fidel Castro.
There was a headline in Politico, Karen Bass praises communist or something, I mean, implying that she's a communist. I mean, why is that the headline? These are opposition dumps. And the second thing is, I mean, look, when Karen Bass went to Cuba, she was 19 or 20. I mean, she was a youth. I mean, even Winston Churchill, I think, has said that if you're not a socialist when you're 20, you don't have a heart. That's sort of Churchill's quote. So you're literally going to hold Karen Bass to account for something she did 40 years ago. I mean, it is a total double standard. I mean, other candidates have not had that level of scrutiny and smearing. And what is being done is a subtle form of otherizing her, of marginalizing her, or delegitimizing her. This implication that somehow she's not American, she's not patriotic. That's very dangerous, and I do think that touches on issues of race and gender, and why it calls for a forceful defense of her.
Do you think that the Dems are being kind of sufficiently vigilant or active in opposing Trump or running against Trump?
You know, I think if the election were tomorrow, we would win, and we need to do everything we can to win, because Trump would be a disaster, sending out law enforcement against peaceful protesters and banning people based on their nationality and putting more kids in cages. I mean, we don't have the moral luxury of sitting out. But I don't think the election is tomorrow. The election is 90 days from now, and I don't think we can win this by default. We have to assume that the polls will tighten. One of the things I think we always look at as fool's gold is we chase these Republicans that they're often with us in the polling, and then suddenly they get cold feet and they return to the Republican. And look, I hope some of them will stay. We obviously ought to be trying to get their vote, but we need to focus on turning out our base, our young people, people of color, women. If we don't get a turnout of our base, I think this is going to be a very tough election, because Trump will get a big turnout. So I think we are in a good position, but complacency would be very foolish.
And I heard you during an interview say that, you know, he comes out with outrageous statements like these whenever the economy is doing badly or his numbers are doing badly. How should Democrats respond to that, or the resistance? Because I do think that oftentimes we don't focus on the policy.
Yeah, I know. I think he often does it. Sometimes I think he does it just to be provocative and just to dominate the conversation. Now, it's hurt him in times. And I think what the Democrats should do is allow him to self-destruct on those types of things and really focus on our affirmative vision what we want to do for people. What are we going to do where people don't have health care? What are we going to do when they can't pay the rent? What are we going to do to get them jobs and their kids jobs? Even people graduating from college are having a tough time getting employment. Well, what is our vision to help people improve people's lives? Ultimately, that's what politics is about. And let Trump, he does a plenty good job of offending people on his own. We don't have to obsess about having that conversation. We ought to be focused on our vision for the country.
And do you think that Bernie should have demanded more concessions from Biden before endorsing him? I know a lot of people are frustrated that he didn't do that.
You know, he had always said since I joined his campaign as a co-chair that he wanted to do everything possible to defeat Donald Trump, and he views this as a really urgent election, and he wanted to do everything in his power to help. And so I think he felt that he was dragging the election, the endorsement on it would not help defeat Donald Trump, and Trump would try to exploit the division and manipulate his policies, and so he didn't want to be part of that. But you know, he is very supportive of the delegates continuing the fight on Medicare for all, and he's supportive of all of us. The four co-chairs issued a statement supporting the delegates' action. He was supportive of the movement in California, where the delegates had me and Barbara Lee and Hilda Solis elected as co-chair instead of Gavin Newsom. So he's supportive of taking back the party and in a progressive direction.
And what about Rashida Tlaib's victory and Cori Bush? Really exciting. And I believe they're both members of Brand New Congress, which you were a member of, right?
They were endorsed by just Democrats, as I have been. I mean, it's really unbelievable when you look at Tlaib's decisive victory, 2-1, and Cori Bush. I mean, I didn't think she would win. I really didn't. And it's a credit to her that she stuck with it. She overcame health issues, that she's a true activist, and amazing story. I mean, we're really going to have now, I'd say, about 10 to 12 passionate progressives in Congress that can make an extraordinary difference. So the progressive movement is definitely on the ascendancy in the Democratic Party. I mean, when people are concerned about the presidency, understandably, but they forget how close Bernie came. If it wasn't for the last 2 days of maneuvering where everyone drops out and rallies around Biden, I'm not saying it. I mean, it is a free country. People can do what they want, but it was definitely a strategy set up. Bernie would have won the nomination. He was favored after Nevada. And the presidency is the hardest thing. But when you look at the ground level, the base level, the foundation, progressives are winning across the board.
Right. Anything that you think in retrospect could have made a decisive difference? Any way that was the moderate consolidation expected? Were there any things that could have been put into place to battle that, prevent that, respond to it?
No, it was very hard to battle that. It was not expected in the way it happened as quickly as it happened, but I don't know if Sanders gotten about it. I do think you need to have broader outreach to the Congressional Black Caucus, to the CBC, to the Black South. I mean, I think that's shown, not with Sanders, but with the progressive movement needs a bigger outreach there. That's why I was so excited about Karen Bass, because she is a progressive and she chairs the Congressional Black Caucus. So I think we have to pull people like that into to listen to their perspective, to learn from them, to see how can we build a progressive vision that wins in these communities. I mean, in African American communities in the South, Medicare for all hold at 85% approval. So how do we convey that message in a way that earns those voters' trust? I think that's an ongoing conversation we need to have.
Right. And also it's a smack in the face to those voters who apparently the Dems care about and for whom they're their base, to not support something like Medicare for all when it's so popular among them.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think so. We have to lead with those strengths. That our agenda, I think, is one that a lot of people will identify with in the African community. But but we can't afford to be losing those states to 70-30, 80-20, and expect to win the Democratic nomination.
Did you see Bill Clinton at John Lewis's funeral thanked Jim Clyburn for, with the stroke of his hand, putting the fight, like ending the intra-party fight
I did. I missed that comment. I missed that comment. Look, I have a lot of respect for Representative Hubbard. I don't think it was his endorsement that did it. I think that the bigger issue, we could have survived the loss in South Carolina. I think the bigger issue was the consolidation and dropping out of 3 candidates or something right before the Super Tuesday. I mean, that's really what did it.
How do you view that? Like, it's, as you said, it's a free country and it's kind of built into politics. Do you think it's like just the wrong? Because to me, it was so gross. And then it's funny, Matt Taibbi, my co-host of Useful Idiots, he was kind of like, yeah, but of course it would happen. And it sounds like you maybe thought it wouldn't happen as overtly or as suddenly as it had. Is it just like uncouth? Is it just not really fair? Is it not really representing democracy? Like, how do you see it as a strategy?
I think we just have to be vigilant and learn from these experiences. I mean, Bernie Sanders did very well in 2016. He did even better in 2020. That means a progressive can win in 24. And so what are our weaknesses? Well, we have to build a broader coalition. We have to anticipate not being divided by the establishment. But I think this means that as long as we're focusing on effective to build as many allies as possible. And I don't think there ought to be a purity test of saying, okay, don't build a coalition with person X, because we see if you don't have enough friends in politics, it's hard to win. That's different than saying, I'm going to suddenly have a diluted Medicare for all plan, or I'm suddenly going to support increased military budget. So what I would say is, be true to convictions, but be tactically a little bit more flexible so that those final 10 yards or the final part that we need to do to get a progressive win, we can do.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Anything else you want to make sure we cover or mention, or any shouts out or?
You know, I just want to thank the activists out there. I mean, they have been extraordinary in pushing for progressive change. You've had so many wins now in the Congress level. Don't get discouraged. I mean, don't think, oh, the platform, we don't have what we want. You're winning. The progressive wing is ascending. It's a matter of time. And, you know, Nelson Mandela said it almost seems impossible before it is done. And so many people, so many times in history, I think people stop right when they're at the cusp of victory. The progressives are on the cusp of victory. We need to just keep pushing.
Do they need to hold people's, do you think they have to try to use some leverage though? Like tough love? Because it seems like people. Sorry, feet to the fire, yeah.
I think that any politician, including me, I mean, I've had progressives criticize things I've said, and I welcome that. I mean, no politician is perfect. No politician has so many constraints on them. What I would say is don't put anyone on the pedestal. I mean, hold us all accountable, criticize us where we need to be criticized, and keep pushing for social justice, racial justice, environmental justice. But absolutely, there's a new sense of accountability, and I think that applies to all of us.
But is there any way to exercise leverage? In other words, like, should people just accept what happens with the Democratic platform? How do progressives actually make demands? You know, because there's so much shaming of people having litmus tests. I just had Brianna Joy Gray on my show, which ironically, I think, and she argues that having litmus tests or demanding things or not conceding your vote actually can make the nominee more electable. That was, I think, what's so interesting.
Oh, that's interesting. I think that there's every right to vote no on a platform. I mean, I think sitting out this election would not be advisable in any way, given the stakes of Trump. But to say we want to vote no on a platform, or to say we disagree with policy, I do think that gives leverage, because Biden, even if he wins, he's going to need a base. He doesn't want to just become a president by default. He's going to need an active base. Every president wants that. And the Bernie base, the progressive base is a huge base. And so that gives them a lot of leverage.
Yeah, Brianna's point was that she was saying, I would vote for Biden, but I want him to win my vote, earn my vote. And people see that as self-indulgent sometimes, or purity politics. But I actually think, since we're talking about things like Medicare for all, it's actually strategic politics, not just for getting him to move to the left, but getting him that much more electable. That's my rant.
I think we have to stand firm on our convictions on such fundamental issues as healthcare is a human right, and we need Medicare for all. And that's an area where I don't see how you compromise.
Yeah, good. I like that. I'm on board with that. Well, thank you so much, Representative Khanna, and keep doing all the amazing work you're doing. And my delay, I don't think we've spoken since Amo Bernie lost, which was very sad, very painful. But I'm glad it didn't get you get in the way of your great work.
No, I appreciate it, and I appreciate all your podcasts and your great journalism on so many issues.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
bye. Thanks.
Take care.
Thanks, you too. Bye.